Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this is another video tutorial for the new Boston. Now in this video we're going to go through some basic setup and then some code in order to detect the user's browser. However, the first stage of this, you need to obtain a file that needs to be placed inside a directory, preferably inside your XAMPP setup or whatever distribution you're using of a PHP package, a PHP Apache package, and you also need to modify your php.ini file. So before you do anything, even if you think this file is up to date, we need to find a file called it's called browsecap.ini. So if you haven't got this file inside I'm in XAMPP here, and then in PHP, you need to have this file somewhere existing. So you can re-download it. If you Google for it, you'll be able to find it at somewhere available to download. Just make sure it's the file for PHP and not for PHP. Yeah. So, okay, once you've obtained this file, copy it over to a directory that you can access, and you can specify it in your php.ini file. So once you've found this file, we go to php.ini. Let's find that down here. Okay, and we're going to open this. So I already have this open, and I've searched for browsecap, and I can see this here, and I've got browsecap equals something. So here we're going to specify where this browsecap file is kept, and in my case it's c:\xampp, and then it's in PHP, and then we need to specify the file name itself. So once you've done this, you can go ahead and file, save. Now what we need to do is we're going to open up our control panel for XAMPP, and I'm going to stop our Apache service. I'm going to click stop. Now that's stopped, and I can restart it now. So our php.ini settings have been initialized by our reset of this. Now what we need to do is come into context, and I'm going to introduce you to a function that's going to allow us to get data about the browser. So now, if you've correctly downloaded browsecap.ini, put it inside a directory and changed your php.ini to point to that file, this should work. If it doesn't work, then check you've done absolutely everything right and you've restarted Apache as well. So inside context, I'm going to create a new variable called browser, and this is going to be equal to a function getBrowser. Now this function takes two arguments. The first argument is the user agent, which we could obtain from the $_server HTTP user agent. However, we're not going to do that. We're just going to specify the value of null. Now the second argument that we need to provide is whether we want this to be returned as an array, and we do want this to be returned as an array because that's how we're going to use it later on. So you just simply put true here. You can put 1 if you want, but it's probably just better to put true. So how are we going to echo out all of the array contents? Well, we're going to use the print r for this, and we're going to obviously put the browser reference to the array in there. So now let's refresh the page and see what happens. Right, okay, so you can see that it's returned quite a few bits of information about my browser. Now you can see things like Chrome in here, Chrome 10, etc., as well as some other information. If you're not receiving any of this information, like Chrome, Mozilla, anything like that, then you may have incorrectly downloaded or incorrectly referenced this browsecap.ini. So again, make sure that's correct. You may just see sort of star under this browser name regex or something. So if you have the following information in front of you, you will be good to proceed. So this is the first stage to using this getBrowser function, and in the second part of this tutorial we're going to look at how we can extract information from this, and we're also going to test it with a couple of other browsers to make sure this information is correct before we start creating if statements to detect the user's browser. Now, just before I go in this part, I want to talk about why we might want to detect the user's browser. It's always an important part of when you're viewing a web page to format things correctly for users, and also you might want to notify users that using another browser might be better to display your web page. So when you are creating a web page, it might look slightly different in other browsers, and if you want to say to a user, download Google Chrome, this is going to work a lot better, then you can recommend, say, Google Chrome to your users in order for them to switch their browser, in order for them to view your page a lot better. So how are we going to work it out? Well, we're going to say, if they're, say, using Firefox or Internet Explorer, we might want to say to them, you're using this browser, please change to Google Chrome to view this website correctly. And vice versa as well. A web page might be better displayed in Internet Explorer, or it might be better displayed in Firefox, as well as a host of other browsers that you can use, so including, say, Opera or Safari. So in the next part of the tutorial, we're going to look at how we can extract some of this information and detect the user's browser and just print a message to them telling them what their browser is. But we're not going to give them any of this rubbish information. We're basically going to give them a single string. So we're going to give them Chrome or Firefox or Mozilla or Internet Explorer. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. So we're not going to be giving them Chrome 10.0 or Chrome with the platform or Chrome like this. We're just going to give it in lowercase, and we're going to use some of this information to detect what browser the user might be using. Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and we're back with the second part of this tutorial for New Boston in detecting the user's browser. Now, in the last part, if you haven't watched it already, go back and watch, otherwise you probably won't understand what's going on. In the last part of the tutorial, we used the getBrowser function, and we updated a specific file in our PHP .ini file. We referenced a file that's going to allow us to use this properly. So we've used printr to print out every element of this, or every key in this array, and each value. Now if we look through this, we can see that we might not be able to make sense out of much of the information. I'm using Google Chrome at the moment, and things like Mozilla are appearing here. So you might be wondering why that is. Well, if you look through the each key, you can see that we've got this key here called browser, and that is equal to the value of Chrome. So then we've got platform, WinVista after that, blah blah blah. So Chrome seems to be the only correct and sort of direct piece of information that we've got. We've just got Chrome there, we've got nothing else. So therefore this is a really great key where we can extract the value and use this information to detect the user's browser. So by the end of this tutorial, I'm going to have created a program that's going to echo out to the user what their browser is. Or we could probably modify it and say you need to use Google Chrome, for example, if they're not using a browser which is Chrome. Okay, so we've got this information here, so we know that the key is browser. This is obviously an associative array, so what we can do is we can come in here and we can echo out browser. Remember, for arrays we use our square brackets, and we can just echo out the key browser. So now let's preview this in Chrome and see what happens. You can see it's just extracted that information. Now this is all the information that we're going to need. Let's go and test this in other browsers. So I'm going to test it in Firefox, and I'm going to test it in Internet Explorer. So I'm going to copy the URL and come into Firefox first of all, and I'm just going to paste that in there. Okay, so now we've got the value Firefox, so it's successfully detected this browser as Firefox. Let's go ahead and open Internet Explorer and do the same. And you can see that it's IE, which is obviously short for Internet Explorer. Okay, so let's take these away and bring back Chrome. Right, so what we want to do now is we've grabbed this information. Now what we want to do is we want to detect the user's browser in terms of telling them that if they're not using Chrome, that they should do. So I'm going to put this browser equal to browser. So this might look a bit confusing, but what I'm in fact doing is replacing this variable, but taking the value of this from this. We're not going to need any more information from this. So what we're doing is we're restoring the information in here. So we can still come down and echo out browser. It will do exactly the same thing. There we go. So back to our text editor, and we're going to create an if statement. Now I'm going to say if browser doesn't equal Chrome, then do something. Now the problem with this is we're using a capital C usually, but what we want to do is we want to ensure that we put everything to lowercase. So I'm going to say str to lower. So we've converted Chrome to lowercase. Let's just kill the page there, and we can echo browser. You can see I've now converted this from Chrome to Chrome lowercase. So now we can perform an appropriate check on this. So it's if browser doesn't equal Chrome, echo you're not using Google Chrome. Please do. So let's just escape this character because I'm using an inverted comma there, or rather a single quotation mark. Let's go back now and refresh. Now nothing's happened. Why is this? Because we're using Chrome. What happens now if we go back into Firefox and refresh? We're going to get this message, you're not using Google Chrome, please do. And what about Internet Explorer? Let's go back and refresh and see what happens. You're not using Google Chrome, please do. So you can see how this is a really simple but effective way to detect the user's browser first of all, and I'm going to leave it up to you guys to play around with this and do whatever you want with it. Basically, you can either tell the user what browser they're using, or you could create maybe a switch statement to do this. It would be a lot easier. You could do exactly what I've done and said, you're not using Google Chrome, please do. There's a variety of uses that you can get out of detecting the user's browser. This is just one, but now that you know how to do it, you can experiment them for yourself.
Okay, this is Alex from PHP Academy creating this tutorial set for the new Boston. Now, we're up to the point in our forms where we're looking from the previous example about how do we create a form and about the action and the method, like you can see here. We're now going to talk about how we use PHP to pick up these variables. Now at the moment we're processing 3 variables through the get method, and this is day, date and year, and we can see this in our browser by here. Now at the moment we're processing these, however we need our PHP page to pick these variables up, and we want to do something with them. We need them to be processed and displayed back to the user in this example. So in PHP now, what we want to do is we want to create first of all a few checks. The first check we need to do is, does it exist? Or in real terms, has it been submitted? Oh, submitted. So this is the first thing we need to check for. The second thing we need to check for is it empty? So, or in actual terms, does the value equal null, or does it equal nothing? So for now I'm going to put null because it's the same thing. So the third thing we need to do is display back to user, and in this whole process, the third process, we need to grab it from the URL. So we need to grab this variable here, the contents of this variable and the contents of this variable, and it's easier than you might think. So let's put these in a comment just here, just so we can keep an eye on them. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is do this, the point 1, does it exist? And to do this we set up an if statement, we create a block, and we say if is set, and this is a function, so is set, inside of it we need to do $_ get. This is how we declare the get, or this is how we grab from the get variable associative array, day. Now what this is doing is it's checking if we've in fact submitted the form, and this here is there, and which it is at the moment. I mean, even if we submit it without any data, this still means it's set. It's set, it doesn't equal anything, but it's still set. So in fact, maybe before we proceed with this itself, we can have a look at just echoing them out normally. So if I was to echo $_ get day, let's type in a day here, Monday, click submit, and you can see it's echoed Monday. So it's taking this value here using this structure, and it's just echoing it straight onto the page above the form. Now this is obviously really unsafe. We could be could be dealing with processing anything really. So we need to check if it's set first of all, if it's empty, and then we need to re-declare some variables and use the htmlentities function to sort of process any HTML code that might be input into them as text to be displayed. But we'll come to that later. So if is set day, as long as that equals true, we can continue with this block. But we also need to say and is set, using exactly the same format for this, is set date and is set $_get year. So as long as we've clicked the submit button and all these form fields have been submitted as a variable, we're okay. Okay. Otherwise we're not. So otherwise we're not going to display anything. So let's go back to the index.php as it is. So day, date and year, we click submit. Okay, that means it's been submitted, the form has been submitted. Now inside of this we need to make a few more checks. So we need to say if not empty, we're using another function here which is the empty function. In fact, now what we can do before we do that is we can redeclare these variables. So day equals $_get day, and then date equals $_get date, year equals $_get year. Now we can say if is not empty day, with the $, and not empty date, and not empty year. We can echo OK. Otherwise we want to say fill in all fields. So let's test this. Back to our index page. If I click submit, fill in all fields. Fill in all fields. Now if we do type in say Monday and 31st, but we forget to enter the year, we're still checking for all of them, so it still says fill in all fields. So Monday, 3/1 and 2011, click submit and it's okay. So now what we can do is we can display these out to the user in this format. So echo it is day space date space year, and that's it. So as long as, let's go back to our index.php page, as long as we enter Monday 3/1/2011 or enter anything in here and we click submit, it will just be displayed like this. Hello, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and in this video for the new Boston I'm going to be talking about post data. Now we've already looked at get data and forms and then form security, but we've been currently displaying all of our data, the variable names and the variable data in our URL. So our structure has been index.php, and then we've had things like date equals Monday, day equals Monday, and then blah blah blah, so on. So what happens if we're submitting something like a long registration form, or let's just say a user has to go on a page and submit a long sort of selection of text in a text field, so they were typing out say a long description of themselves. For this purpose, it's not a good idea in any means to use get, but what we do is we use something called post, and this uses a different method. It uses the HTTP post method, and this processes the data, it sends the data directly to the form and doesn't include it in the URL itself. So it's great for things like passwords, it's great for things like long registration forms. As well, it's good to note that get actually does have, if you were to use variables like this, This a lot of browsers and web servers have limits on how much get data can be processed at once, and as well when you're using things like file uploads, you need to be processing the file data through a form into a page, and you use post as well as another attribute to the form field which is called enc type, but we're not going to be going into that until we deal with form field uploads. So we're going to take a look at an example, and this example is going to be typing in a password, and in this case we're going to be submitting the password. We're going to be creating a form first of all down here. We're going to be submitting a password and checking it, and we're going to be telling the user is the password correct. So we're going to start off by setting up our form, and we have the form action and the method as usual. And remember, the form action, we can either go to another PHP page or we can stay on the same one. In this case I'm staying on exactly the same one, so we're submitting all the data inside this form to index.php. The method though, instead of get, is going to be post, and this automatically means that the data is not going to be sent, well, it's going to be sent as post, it's not going to be sent as get. So let's say password, and we break down and we have an input type. Now this time we're not going to choose text, because what would happen would be is we would be able to see anything we typed in here. However, we are going to choose the type password, and this means that the browser interprets this as a password field and you can no longer see anything in there. So that's interesting if you didn't already know how to do that. The name of this is going to be password. Okay, and we're going to break down a couple more times, and we're going to be an input type submit value equals submit, just as we did in the last example. So as this stands, we're submitting a password in this form when we click submit. So as as to the previous example with get, I typed something in here, clicked submit, and we saw it appear here. However, now if I was to type, say, password in here and click submit, we've actually submitted this now to the form. The data has been submitted. However, it's not visible up here, and obviously at the moment not visible on the page because we haven't done anything with the data. Now, just to show you the example, I'm going to echo out $_ and this time post and password. Remember, this name here corresponds to the name that you've given the form field. So let's refresh the page, type in hidden, for example, and click submit. You can see that hidden is now displayed, okay, but still not displayed up here. So what can we do with this? We can again check that the form has been submitted. So we say if is set, and we say $_ post this time password. We execute in this block here. So if we've submitted and the password has been sent, or the form field data has been sent, we now need to grab that. So I'm going to say password equals $_ post password. Now, as discussed in the security video relating to forms, we could do the HTML entities just here. However, we're not actually displaying this password back out to the user. We're just going to process it down here and check that it's equal to a preset password. So the password I'm going to say is pass123. Okay, so the password must be equal to pass123 for us to validate it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if password corresponding to this variable, which then corresponds to this here, because we're taking the post data, which then corresponds to what the user's typed in. So if the password is equal to match, say something, otherwise say something else. And what we're going to say in here is echo that is correct, and otherwise we're going to say that is incorrect. Okay, so let's test this out. We'll go back to the index.php page, we'll click submit. It says that is incorrect. We haven't actually checked for the existence yet, but we can do that. We could say here if is not empty. Password. Do all of this down to here. Ooh, and then we can indent this. So this reads as, if it's set, set a new variable called password to the posted password. If it's not empty, do all of this, and then otherwise, I mean, can you see in my text editor where when I click to the end of this curly bracket here, that highlights in red, this also highlights in red. So I can see that this starts here and ends here, therefore I can do else, please enter a password. Okay, so let's go back onto our page. Now I'm going to submit it without entering anything, and it says please enter a password. Now I'm going to enter a password, just absolutely anything, into the form and click submit. That is incorrect. Now if I was to type pass123 and I was to click submit, we've validated that as correct, therefore we're displayed with the message that is correct. So we've posted a password through this form. We've used the post method with the HTTP post method, which doesn't display it here, and has allowed us to process it in secret. Now I'm not going to show you an example, but if you were processing, say, a long amount of data, you'd also use the post, as well as file uploads like I discussed earlier, but that will be later on in the series. So this is basically posting variables in PHP. Hello, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this is another video tutorial for the new Boston. Now in this tutorial we're going to be talking, or rather in this short tutorial series, we've got the get variable, the post variable, and we're also talking about request, which will be something later on when we've understood about forms in general. This first tutorial is going to talk about HTML forms. We're going to go sort of back to basics and how we use them and different elements of them that allow us to process data through PHP, or send data to a page rather. Now I'm going to be using this example for the same page, but when you do post data, you can either post it to the same page that you're on currently, or you can post it to another page. Now if you don't understand what I'm talking about, that's absolutely fine. I will begin to create my HTML form and I'll explain each element of the form as we go along. We're not actually going to be doing any PHP programming necessarily in this video. Okay, so the first thing we do when we specify a form is the start and the end tag of the form. We also specify an action and a method. Now the action is where this form is going to submit when a submit button is clicked. So we include a submit button on our form. This will be inside here a bit later on. Now the first thing we do, like I said, is we declare the the action, sorry. Yeah, we'll do the action first. So in this case, I want the action to link back to this same page, and this page is called index.php. You can see this shown here and up here as well. So we've got form action equals index.php. When a submit button is clicked, the form will then submit any data that is inside of it to this same page, and then we can start to process this data inside our PHP tags. The method can either be get or post, depending on how you're submitting the variables. Now a little about either of them. Get is basically sending the data, it's visible in the URL, and it's sending the variables through the format of a URL. Post sends data through the HTTP post method, so they're slightly different. I'm not going to talk about them quite yet, but I'm going to use get just to show you an example in this tutorial. So what do we want to do first? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enter some input fields. So I'm going to say day, and I'm going to create an input type, or an input tag. So on its own it would look like this, and the type is going to be text. The name of it is essentially what you're naming it in regard to a variable. This will be submitted and we can pick it up using the collection of get variables, which is almost like an associative array. So the name of this I'm going to call is day. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down, and I'm going to say date, input type equals text, name equals date, so we're calling it something different. We're breaking down again, and we're saying year. So input type equals text, name equals year. We break down a couple more times just to keep everything neat, and I'm going to create a button. And in fact, let's just see how this looks at the moment. Let's refresh. Okay, so we've got day, date, and year. In actual fact, just to make things a bit tidier, I'm going to break in between each one of these as well. So that is looking like that. So we've essentially created our form already. We just need a button, like I said earlier, down here, and that's input type of submit, and the value of that is what is displayed. So if I get rid of this here and I refresh, you can see it just says submit. Some browsers it will default to submit request, but I can specify anything here. You can see that will just create it to look like any, well, it'll create with the capitalized text, anything. So I'm just going to call this submit. Okay, so now what's going to happen is, if you watch, by default my browser doesn't show the index.php page in its URL. However, if I was to click on submit, like I said earlier, we've just applied the action of this form to go to index.php. So when I click on it, you'll notice the URL up here changes, and we've also included a few variables. We've got day, date, and the year. So the way this works is, after the page name itself, which is here in blue, we have a question mark, and after this we specify our variables. So the name of the variable is day, and that is equal to something. At the moment it's nothing. And then we say and with an ampersand symbol. We say date is equal to something here. At the moment it's equal to nothing. And then again the year is equal to something here, which at the moment is equal to nothing. So if, for example, I type Monday, I type 31st, and I type 2011, and I click submit, if you look up the top of the page, you can see that the URL has changed, and in actual fact the day is equal to Monday, date is equal to 31st, and the year is equal to 2011. So now we have submitted what's called get variables through PHP using a form. So that's how to create a form and submit them. However, we want to actually do something with them. Now in the next tutorial we're going to be looking at get variables and how we should use them and why we should use them, and then in the other tutorial we're going to look at post variables, and again the same, how we use them, why we use them. So this has been basically how to create the form and submitting the variables, and so we can use them eventually in PHP. Hello, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, following on from this video for the new Boston. Now, we've already established our variables and we've output them in PHP. Let's just take a look at the code again. We've basically fulfilled all three of our requirements. Now, if you haven't already seen this video of creating this, please go back and watch it, otherwise you're not going to completely understand what's going on. Now what we've done is we've taken the variables, we've checked whether the form is being submitted. If we submit the form without, we say fill in all fields. If we enter something in each of these, we are displayed with this. Now this video is going to deal with the security of form data. If I was, say, extracting data from a database or submitting data to a database, then extracting it back, and anything user submitted, there's always going to be a chance that people are going to try and mess around with your code or with your web application, whatever it may be. Now, the day is Monday, the date is 31st, and the year is 2011. However, what's to stop me typing in this? So I'm going to have the day in bold, a normal date, and then let's underline the year, and I click submit. You can see that the output to the page has now been formatted depending on what the users put in. Now the reason this is dangerous is because I could in fact say iframe source equals a page here, I could end my iframe there. I could type in anything here, I could type in anything there, and you can see that what's happened is that we've returned this HTML and it's echoed it out onto the page. Therefore we're processing HTML on a page. We don't want our users to be able to do this, and there's a simple way that we can protect against this, a simple and effective way to protect against this. Now what we do is when we declare our variables here, day, date and year, we can also include these wrapped in functions, and the function we need is HTML entities. We don't need to worry about this here because we're not doing anything with this data when we check this here. So for example, we wouldn't need to say HTML entities there. It would be absolutely pointless because we're not displaying the data here, we're just checking whether this particular variable here is set. So we wrap the function that we're eventually going to display. Remember, we're displaying day down here, so we need to protect by wrapping what we're grabbing in this function. So HTML entities, and what HTML entities does, I can show you on the page when we view the source of this. Entities. Yeah. Okay, so HTML entities, what this is going to do is it's going to take, let's say for example, a strong tag. It's going to keep the word strong, that's fine. Keep the word strong here, that's absolutely fine. But it's going to turn these into a value that's, rather than processed on an HTML page, it's displayed on an HTML page. So for example, a pound sign like that exists as a pound sign. However, if we want to display a pound sign in an HTML format, we'd use and pounds, okay? Or I think it's and pound, but you know what I mean. So we're actually taking these, right, let's view the source at the moment and we can see what we're talking about. Okay, so at the moment we've got iframe source and this is being displayed on the page. No. Okay, we need to take this away. We'll just take day away for now. So for the day I'm going to write iframe source blah 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 31 2011. Let's refresh. Now for the day we've got this iframe up. Now let's view the page source, and you can see that the code exists as you would normally type it on a page. So you'd normally type iframe if you wanted an iframe to be displayed. Now this is a massive security issue now because we're displaying it as we might type it if we wanted to create the page. So with the HTML entities, what we're actually doing, let's just refresh the page, is we're now just displaying it on its own, and we do this by using these HTML entities, in fact, to display everything rather than process them as HTML tags. So that's basically the basic security around your form. There's obviously added security when you're dealing with different things, but if you're displaying data on a page, for now this is absolutely adequate to ensure that your users don't do things like change the background. Well, they can't change the background color, but iframes are very dangerous for sort of XSS attacks, things like that. So that's basic security on your form. Hello, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this is a video for the new Boston. Now in this tutorial we're going to be talking about sessions inside PHP. Now you've probably already heard of cookies, and sessions are quite similar in the sense that they store information about the user that's currently visiting your website. So we're going to be storing a piece of information. It might not just be about them, but it will be a value that is either relative to them or they've entered. So why do we store sessions and why do we store cookies? Now there's another video tutorial on cookies, but in each video I'm going to explain the main differences between them and what should be used when for mainly security purposes. Now sessions are stored on the server, so they're hidden from the user. We don't have an easy ability to change sessions. So let's just say we had a table, for example, in which user data was stored, and one of the fields in this table was ID, one of the fields was, let's say, the name, and one of the fields was, let's just say, some private data. Now I'm going to assign the ID of 1 to, say, the user Alex, and some private data will go here. Now if we had an ID of 2 with a username, let's say Billy, and we had some private data here, if I was using cookies, for example, and I was storing the value of 1 in cookies, when we go to read that cookie in, I'm freely able to change the value. So I could change the ID that the current cookie, down here, at the moment it might be 1. Now let's say I wanted to act as if I was Billy, I could change that to 2. Therefore all my code will be updated to give me information about Billy. So if that doesn't make sense, it will make sense on later examples, but for now you need to understand with sessions they're a lot more secure. Things like shopping carts, user login systems, they tend to be a lot better. But what we can do is then use cookies to remember, and we can use secure cookies as well. We can encrypt things. So just for now, sessions, if you're using them alone, they're a lot easier and they're quicker. Now what do we do to create a cookie? I mean, in this example I'm going to show you how to set a cookie and then how to view a cookie that's already been set, and we can also check if a session, if a session has been set, and then we can view it. So we can also check if a session has been set before we view it. So the first thing we need to do is type session start at the top of our page before we do anything with session data. So if you were declaring session data, let's say up here, then this would not work, because you need to have session start before you start to do anything with sessions. Now to set a session, you've seen examples such as $_post and $_get. And this works in exactly the same way. What we do is we say $_session. We have 2 square brackets. We have the variable name. So let's just say we want to call our session name. Now what we do is we set this relative to a piece of information. So I'm going to say name equals Alex. So this is now a session name. Now this variable exists only on this page now. However, it's being stored now as a session, so therefore this should be accessible by any page in our website at any time, even if we don't declare it. So what I've done is essentially started the use of sessions, then I've set a session called name equal to Alex. Now that's on set.php, so let's just go over to this session folder here, and we click on set. Now what's happened now is we've executed or run this code, and session has been set. This particular session has been set with the value Alex. So what happens on view.php when we want to return this data to the user? Now usually you would have to include this file inside this file, so include set.php when we're working with variables. However, because this is session data and it's stored on the server about us now, we're viewing this now, you don't need to. So session start, make sure you include that in even when you're reading back variables, session start. Then we can simply echo $_session name. And what this is going to do, it's going to take this stored variable inside this session called name, and it's just going to display it to us in the view.php file. So we're on set now. We've already set that variable. So let's go back and click on view, and you can see that it's shown Alex. Now you may be asking, why is this useful? How is this useful? Well, it's useful for things like user logging in. For example, if a user was to log in, you want to remain or want to keep them logged in throughout while the time they're browsing your website. So this is a way to store a session and show that they're logged in. So let's just say we change this to username equals and then Alex in lowercase. Okay, so we have started our session up here, and we've set our session in this file here. Now let's just say this was a login page. We've logged the user in successfully. There would obviously be other code, but now in view.php I want this file to be something that you have to be logged into view. So I can just start up an if statement and say if is set $_session at username, and I can say if it is set, we can do something in here meaning they're logged in because the session has been set. Otherwise, echo please log in. Now here I can say echo welcome. Then what I can do is I can maybe do a comma, then concatenate on $_session username. You could store this in a variable here if you wanted to make it a lot easier to use later on, but just for now I'm going to show you it this way so you can understand. So at the moment we don't have a session variable called username set. So if we go to this view.php page and refresh, you can see it says please log in. Now if we go back to our other file set.php, what we've done now is we've set our username session data, and that's equal to Alex. So the result we should achieve when we go on view.php is that we check if the session exists, and it does, so we're going to echo welcome, comma, and then the user's name. So if we click on view, you can see that that's exactly what we get, and it says welcome Alex. So you can see now how simple it is in actual fact to create some kind of login and register system. Obviously these are the very or these are just a minor part of the registration and login system itself. However, later on things like that are a lot easier to pick up when you have these types of fundamentals. So that's sessions in PHP. Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org with another video for the new Boston. Now we've already looked at setting PHP sessions and why they're useful. However, if we wanted to unset a session for any reason, or unset a particular session, or unset all sessions, we need a way to do this, and there's a couple of ways that you can do this, either by unsetting an individual session. You might not want to end all your sessions, but we've got a function called unset that's going to unset a particular session that we specify, or you can use another function called session destroy, which will unset all the sessions related to that user and your server. So in this set.php file, we've already started up our session, and we've set a session called username to the value of Alex, and in the view we're checking for this. Now I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this unset.php. Now this might be a logout file. You might be logging your users out. We've already spoken about why sessions might be useful for login systems. We might be even clearing the total of a user's basket, or deleting items from a user's basket. So just imagine this is a logout page. Now you may for example want to unset a particular session. Now to do this you want to use unset. Now you can see that the session is called session or it's called username. So I'm going to unset $_session username. Now there's a fundamental mistake I've made in this file on purpose, just so you can see why. Now let's go ahead and set this. I'm going to go back and I'm going to click on view, and you can see that it's welcoming me here. So we've already looked at this example. Now if I'm to click on unset.php and then go back and then click on view again, you can see that it still says welcome Alex. Now why is this the case when we've used this unset feature, or this function, to unset this username? And the simple answer is I've actually purposely forgotten to put session start. So even though you're unsetting sessions, you still need to declare this function or call this function in order to unset your sessions. And it will be the same for the other example I'm going to show you in just a moment. So let's go back and click set just to make sure that's definitely set.
click on view, and it says welcome Alex. So now let's go back and click on unset. Now this time we should have succeeded in unsetting that session. So if we click on view, it now says please log in. So you may come across in your programs when you're using this, oh, the session's not unsetting, you know, why is this? This might be a question in your mind, why isn't it working? It's frustrating you. The answer is always check that you've correctly started your sessions up before you try to unset them. Now, what if I want to have a couple of sessions that I want to unset? So I want to unset more than one session, in fact all the sessions that exist. So I'm going to make a few changes to this program. Under set, I'm going to set another session, and this is going to be called age, and I'm going to set this equal to 21. Now on view, we're going to say if is set session username and $_ oh no, remember our another is set function in there. So we're checking that both these sessions exist, and then we're saying welcome to the username, and then we're going to say you are, and then we're going to specify my age just by calling that in there, or concatenating that. So now what's the result we're going to achieve if we come and reset our sessions? We come back and click view. Welcome Alex, you are 21. So we've used two different sessions now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click unset. I'm going to go back again and click on view. In fact, this is a bad example because we are checking for both of these. Let's just get rid of that there. Okay, so now if I refresh, you can see welcome and then a comma and then a full stop, because just one of the sessions is missing. Remember, in this unset file we're only unsetting the username. So let's just reset everything again just so we can view the example of unsetting all of them. Click view. So now this is being displayed correctly. Now what happens if I want to unset all sessions? So I'm going to get rid of this line and I'm simply going to type session _ destroy. Now what this command here is going to do, when we call this function, we are unsetting all sessions that currently exist. So not for all users across your website, but just between the connection me and the server. So now what I can do is I'm going to refresh again just so you can see that the data is still there. Now I'm going to click unset. I'm going to go back again and I'm going to click view, and we've removed both the session data, so we've removed my name and my age. So that's basically unsetting session data in PHP. Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy, and this is another video tutorial for the new Boston. Now we're going to be looking at PHP cookies. Now you've probably heard of cookies before, maybe if you've looked at your browser settings. I mean, I'm sure everyone knows what cookies are. But how do we actually use them, and how useful are they in everyday programming sort of on websites? Now let me just explain quickly what a cookie is. A cookie is a piece of data, if you like, or a file that's stored with specific information, and it's unique to you and the website that you are viewing. So if you view on your browser a website that's set a specific cookie, when you access that website, depending on the expiration time of the cookie, that piece of data will be relayed. So it will be relayed from your computer to the website. So this way websites can store data about users or about your specific preferences on that website, and it can be stored on your computer for later access. So how do we go about setting a cookie, and why are they useful? Now some of the reasons that they can be useful for is just literally storing data that needs to be used at a later date, but for a long expiration time. You might have already looked at PHP sessions, but cookies are going to allow you to set a much longer expiration date. So sessions are closed as soon as your browser is closed and the connection is shut with the server. However, with cookies, we could store a cookie for years perhaps. So to set a cookie, we use the set cookie function, and this takes a few arguments. I'm not going to go through every argument, but I'm going to go through three main arguments. And the three main arguments we're going to look at are, first of all, the name of the cookie that you're setting,
then the value, and then the expiration date, so the time in which the cookie is going to be valid for. Now, remember when we looked at sessions, if you have looked at sessions, you did something similar to this. We had the name of the session here, and then the value here. Or rather, this is going to be called the key and the value. Now, with set cookies, we just use this one function to set the cookie. The name of it's here, so I could say username. Here's going to be the value, so I'm going to say Alex. Now the expiration time is a bit different. You need to think about this logically, and it's by default in seconds. So if, for example, I was to set a session cookie with the value of 60 here as an argument, that's going to make this cookie last for 60 seconds, and after that it's no longer going to be valid. So we can test this. I'm going to create a session cookie with the value of 5. Now what happens when I want to, we've set this in this page, so if we come and refresh, that should be okay. Okay, so we've set the cookie in this page. Now what happens when we want to retrieve this value in view? Now within 5 seconds this would have already expired, so we're going to have to reset it in a minute. All we do is we say echo, and then what we do is we use $_cookie, so much like session, and then the name of the cookie, so this is username in this case, so username, and that's basically it. We haven't had to declare anything anywhere else. Well, we have, but we haven't had to set anything anywhere. The same that we did with sessions, with session, spell it right, with session start. So these are a lot more freely used on your page. We also don't need to kill well, we do need to kill a cookie at some point, but this is done in a slightly different way to sessions. So we're echoing cookie username. Now at the moment we shouldn't receive a value because the cookie does not exist, because the expiration time is 5 seconds. So if I go back to set again here, so in this page we can reset or refresh rather, and then what we can do is before the 5 seconds are over we can quickly come back to view. Oh no, maybe let's just change that to 10. Set.php, so that's hopefully set the cookie, and now into view.php. Okay, and it's not working, so let's think why that could be. Right, okay, so yeah, okay, so I've forgotten sort of a vital part of this, and the point is that what we do is we in fact set a timestamp here, and timestamps in PHP are basically they're an amount of seconds from a specific date. I can't remember what the date is. I think it's somewhere in 1990. But there is another video on that, so you can go and reference to that if you want. So what we would do is to access a timestamp, originally we would use time equals timestamp, whereas time now is just a variable that I've set. Oh no, sorry, we would do time. So we'd use the time function to grab a timestamp. Let's just have a look at that, so so you can see what we're looking at. That's in set. So echo that out. Okay, so we have our timestamp here, which is a long number. Now what we do is when we set a cookie, we set it from the current time, so we can use this function within this function here, but then we add on the amount of seconds we want for it to expire. So then what can happen is we can do a check. It will automatically do it for us, but it will check against the timestamp plus 10. So it will check 10 seconds from now. So apologies for getting that wrong before, but it's just one minor thing I forgot. So let's test this out again. So so we've got set.php. Let's refresh. Now the cookie has been set. We come into view.php and you can see that it's been set. Now as I'm talking to you, eventually the cookie is going to expire because the timestamp is going to be less than the current date. So if I refresh again, I think that should go. Yeah, so now our cookie has expired. So you can understand now the use of this for login systems where you say, you know, you might log your user in default by an hour, but you might have a check box to say keep me logged in for, you know, keep me logged in or something, and then that would keep the user logged in for maybe a month, 2 months. You could set it up to sort of a period of a year if you wanted to say constantly keep them logged in. So that's basically how cookies are useful. But remember, the cookies are stored on the user's computer, so they're dangerous to use for things like sensitive data that you don't want the user to be able to change. For example, if you were to have a shopping cart and you had the total set in a cookie, you don't necessarily want this unless you're using some form of encryption or some other way to or some database usage to store this where the user can't make the change. So this is how we do it. And that's basically sessions or cookies in PHP. Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy, creating this video for the new Boston, and I'm back to tell you how we're going to unset a cookie. So we've already set a cookie, and in the last example we set this for 10 seconds. Now, just for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to increase this to say a larger time. So I'm going to say 1000 seconds, just so we can show that it's working. So in view.php we can view the contents of the cookie. So if we just refresh at the moment, we can see that there's nothing set. So we go to set.php, that sets it. We can go back to view and you can see that the data is being shown, and that's corresponding to this data in here. Now what if I want to break this before the expiration time that I've set, which is 1000 seconds? Now you might think, oh, there may be some kind of function, you know, or unset cookie, or that says sunset, so unset cookie or something like that. But in actual fact, the way to do this is to reset the cookie. Now by this I mean we use exactly the same line of code. However, if we want to unset it, we just put a minus value in. It's as simple as that, and that will unset the cookie. So even though in this instance here we're setting the cookie, a line down we are unsetting it. So even when we access set.php that previously set our cookie, we've also unset it as well. So now if we were to go back and click on view, you can see that the name Alex doesn't appear because it won't be able to find this value because we have set then unset it. So why do you need to unset a cookie, or why would you ever need to unset a cookie? Well, the answer is quite simple. I've already spoken about login and registration systems. If you'd logged your user in and you're storing the fact that they're logged in a cookie, and you've maybe logged them in for 1000 seconds, if you wanted to log them out, you might have a log out button. Now when I click a log out button, we need some way of ensuring that that cookie is deleted and unset, so the user's no longer logged in. So obviously clicking a log out button would perform some kind of operation like this to ensure that the cookie's unset and the user's no longer logged in. So that's a simple example of why you'd unset a cookie, and that's basically a simple way, and well, I think the only way to unset a cookie in PHP.